Well, I am excited to be bringing to the line today's trainer. She is a silver consultant as well as an IATAN accredited agent. We are super excited to have her a part of our special needs training team. She comes to us and gives such great information. She's heralding out of Las Vegas, if I'm correct. Am I correct,
Las
Stacy?
Vegas, baby, let's go.
Thought I had it
Right.
right. I was about to roll it on out and make some kind of casino joke. And I said, you know what? I'm not 100% sure that I'm saying. I knew it was Nevada, but I said, well, it might not be. But
Oh yeah.
she is heralding from Vegas, and we are excited to have her. I need you guys to do me a quick favor, locate the chat box and help me welcome to the line Stacy Wren. Stacy, are you available to take the call?
Yes, I am coming in from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, which is like hell right now in the heat. It's horrible. It is so horrible hot here. It's crazy. Thank you everybody for coming on the line today. How's everybody doing? Drop a fire emoji or a 7 in the chat box. Everyone's doing good. My name's Stacy Wren. I am a silver consultant and a travel booker. I've been with the company for 18 months now, living my best life with my travel business. And one of the niche areas in travel that I like to focus on is special disabilities and mobility challenges. So today we are going to talk about an autistic traveler as an adult or child flying solo. I am going to share my screen with you. Great. Can everybody see my screen? Somebody put a thumbs up on their camera or a 7 in the chat box. Okay, perfect. So we're going to talk about autistic travelers flying solo. This is a real live interaction that I had with a client of mine. And this is a very basic training just to show you some of the conversations that can come up when you are assisting special disabilities travelers. All right, so today's agenda, we are going to review my recent autistic traveler flight request. We're going to review airline policies, and then at the end, we'll have some open question and answer session. All right, so this is Shelly and Jason. They are my clients. This is us on a group cruise on Royal Caribbean back in May. And on this group cruise, she booked another cruise with me before she got off the ship to go to Alaska next year. So she's now a repeat client, okay? This was her request when she got home. She said, hi there, we have to pay our Alaska money, her new deposit. And our son would like to travel to Birmingham, Alabama. He is 27 and he has autism. He is very verbal and seems like he knows exactly what he's doing. But if he's left alone, he would get lost and have a total panic attack. Flights to Birmingham have a stop in Dallas usually. Is it possible to arrange an escort for him to take him to his next destination, then someone to help him in Birmingham? And this is him here. This is her son. I said, hey, Shelly, sorry, I just saw your message. Yes, let's get you transferred into the group, which is something separate about Alaska. And she said, did you get the form that I emailed you? Also, tell me about your son. He's going to visit Birmingham to see family. So he just needs help in the airport in Dallas, or do we need someone from Vegas to Birmingham and then while in Birmingham and back to Vegas? So asking a little bit more about what exactly is going on and what kind of assistance he needs. And she said, well, if I can be allowed to put him on the airplane, and then if my son can get permission to pick him up at the gate in Birmingham, we won't need help there. How does that work? And if there is a way for you to schedule the flight and get him help at whatever transfer airport he needs to make. He would definitely need someone to walk him off the plane and get him to his next gate and see that he gets on the plane. Almost like a child traveling. He's 27, but his sense of direction and actual mentality is that of an 11-year-old. Although he can act older and has great vocal skills and is wonderful to be around, he would get very lost very easily. This is my message. Hey, Shelley, I called American United and Southwest, and they all have the same response. They do not have a system in place to require someone to stay with Matthew when transferring flights. In fact, Southwest said that if an employee was to stay with him and they turn their back momentarily, Matthew could wander off and get lost. Southwest explained that when we book, they will notate that the reservation that the passenger has cognitive disabilities, so they will provide some aid and check on them during the flight, but it will not be custodial care where they stay with them every moment, including during a flight connection. You're able to go to the ticket counter when he leaves in Vegas and ask for a pass to go through TSA, so you can escort him to the gate, and your son can do the same thing to pick him up. Have you considered putting him on a nonstop flight to Atlanta and then having your son drive 2 hours from Birmingham to pick him up? Southwest, Spirit, and Frontier all have nonstop options to Atlanta from Las Vegas. Shelley says, so they just leave children to transfer flights on their own? That doesn't make sense. And here I go on again. I called American and I spoke to them for 20 minutes. They do not provide assistance between gates in a connecting city, and they don't sit with the passenger. So if they notate that the client has a special disability at the gate agent, they could check in with other passengers or be working on the computer to get everyone boarded, and they won't keep a constant eye on them or walk them to the bathroom or the gift store. Also, airlines ask you questions when you are putting a notation on the account that the client has cognitive disability. They say, are they able to understand and perform the safety instructions from the flight crew? Are they able to understand and follow instructions to evacuate the terminal in case of an emergency? In the event of a connecting flight is delayed or canceled, they have to be able to check themselves into a hotel, return to the airport, complete the check-in process, and sometimes wait at a designated area for an escort. They will provide the service at no cost if all your answers are a no. The unaccompanied minor program is $150 cost, but he automatically doesn't qualify for that because of his age. Lastly, they advise that recently many airlines have been putting an embargo out, which means when they see weather and flight delays are coming and there's unaccompanied minors or special disability passengers scheduled, they will reschedule or refund them to avoid any issues. I just want you to be aware of everything they recommend. You can walk them to the gate in Vegas and your son can get a gate pass. A nonstop flight would be best. That way, family members ensure he's getting on and off the plane without relying on anyone else or possible issues. She then tells me in writing, okay, all the answers are a no. I know a one-way flight would be easiest, but we're not doing that. Thank you for all your effort to make sure Matthew is safe. It's fine if the person doesn't stay with him. He will probably just call me and I'll help him at that time. So if we can get some dates going, that would be wonderful. And then she sent me his details. And I said, hey, Shelley, I see these flights and they have plenty of options coming home too. I'll defer to you to book directly. I want to make sure Matthew is watched after and safe, and wouldn't feel right if I booked the flight and they drop him off at the connecting gate and left him there and something happened. I apologize and thank you for understanding. So here's what American Airlines has on their website, and you can Google any airline with the words special assistance or disability or autism or mobility. And on American, they have all these tabs at the top, but cognitive and development assistance. So if the customer is, or the passenger is able to do all these things on their own, which I read off already, then they will label them as a passenger that's flying alone with cognitive disabilities, and somebody will assist them. But if they need continuous care or they're unable to do these things on their own, then they shouldn't be traveling alone, and the airline is not going to take responsibility for anything that happens to them. So at this point, I felt unsafe that Matthew was going to be traveling in a connecting city without somebody with him continuously, after she already told me that he acts like an 11-year-old, but he's 27-year-old and he could easily wander off. She said all that in writing. And she also told me in writing that all the answers to these questions were a no. So there was no way I was going to book anything for him to be traveling alone without help, even if she said that it was okay, right? Because she's signing for me to book the flights, not even him. So I had to take the chance of potentially upsetting this client or losing my client, but she took it fine and booked it on her own, and I haven't asked her what they ended up doing. But there are extra steps that you need to take to make sure that the client understands the situations that they're putting these passengers in. And if you don't feel comfortable, then you should back out, right? Because if, let's say, somebody walked Matthew in Dallas from the plane to the connecting gate and sat him at the little seats that have the wheelchair assistance logo on them right by the gate agent, and the gate agent was aware, and she gave him the lowdown of how the boarding is going to go for the next flight, and then someone came up and they were upset because their connecting flight didn't make it or they needed to change, and that gate agent went on the computer and Matthew turned to the side and saw something or went to the bathroom or the gift store, he could get lost, right? And who booked that flight and who has a credit card authorization with the client saying all of this, and I still went ahead and booked it, right? So I don't want to be held liable, and I certainly don't want anything to happen to anybody when their guardian or their caregiver has already admitted to me in writing that they're not able to fly on their own. And I gave them a alternative suggestion, right? The son lives in Birmingham, which is 2 hours from Atlanta. So the best thing would have been for them to put him on a nonstop flight from Vegas to Atlanta and just have the son drive 2 hours and pick him up. I'm not sure why they didn't want to do that, but I wouldn't send my kids there, whether they have special disabilities or not, on a connecting flight. And so I thought this would be a great example to use for training today, just to show everybody what can happen and what conversations are like, and how sometimes you have to say to yourself, is this a situation that I want to put myself in, a professional situation? So that's all I got. At the end, I put a quote, which I may or may not have taken from the Time to Evolve call last night, but your brand is the single most important investment you can make in your business. So my brand as a special disabilities travel agent is to always make sure the safety of my travelers comes first, right? I don't ever want to have a brand where I put somebody somewhere in a situation just to get a booking or to keep a repeat client. So I'll open it up and you can unmute or raise your hand, and Deidre can talk about questions.
Excellent. Great job, Stacy. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question.
Training, Stacy, great training. And yes, that's one of my favorite quotes that I use on all my closing, but thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I will add, Stacy, I'm training next week. And when I saw your topic, I was like, oh my goodness, do I need to change my training for next week? And actually, I think mine will be a great carryover after yours, because I'm going to be talking about tools and programs to assist our special needs and special disability travelers. So I'm going to be talking about some of those tools that are available. But you're right, unfortunately, we still have a ways to go in the travel industry with some of the policies and things.
Yeah, there's a lot of discrepancy still, because if I can pay $150 for my 9-year-old to be accompanied with somebody the whole way on a connecting flight, and they'll even make sure if there's a delay or a cancellation that they're taken care of, then why wouldn't somebody with special needs have that same service, but I think people are scared and sometimes there's liabilities, and that's exactly why I didn't book this client, because there's a lot of unknowns. Right, and that's okay. You know, I don't want to put myself or them or someone else in another situation. Like, just saying that he can't function in the airport by himself, but then it's okay, he'll FaceTime me. No,
Right.
I don't think so. My 9-year-old doesn't FaceTime me when I go to the nail salon 1 mile away and I call her 3 times and she's home alone with my
Right.
14-year-old. I'll just throw that.
All right, we have a question from Terry.
Yes, Terry.
Hello. I thought your training was very good and informative, and I think that's terrible that nobody has a contingency plan in place for that. But my question is, do you book? Do you still get people? You didn't get this lady, but do you still get a travel booked? I have a friend who's blind, a couple of friends who are blind. I have another former student who had cerebral palsy. And, you know, they want to travel. Even blind people want to travel and quote unquote see things, you know, and experience different places.
I think it's just a case by case, right? So if somebody is blind or they have cerebral palsy, as long as you are conveying the information from the airline or the resort or the venue,
Mhm.
whatever policies they have in place, and you have them sign off on a credit card authorization for those same policies. All of my credit card authorizations, my booking forms are done electronically on Adobe Sign. So I don't print pieces of paper and collect them. Everything's done electronically. So, and that's with anything, that's with any booking, whether or not they have something going on or not. So as long as you relay those policies and they sign off on it, that's releasing you of them not knowing. But if it gets to the point of where it's beyond common sense and you feel uncomfortable, like you wouldn't send your blind family member in that situation, then that's when you say no. And this is a repeat client of mine. I mean, I traveled with her. So I kind of, in the beginning, felt like I was rolling the dice a little.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
didn't want to risk losing her, canceling her Alaska cruise with me next summer. But what if something happened? I mean, that would be
Exactly, because especially in
not
an
worth
airport,
it.
anything can happen. So you don't, so she did not, so her son is gonna stay at home. What happened with that
I just
story?
told her I'll defer to you, and that's the last that I heard from it. She said great, and I sent her some flight options, like the times, and
Mhm,
you know, I sent her the options and said,
Op-
here's what the flights are and what time, and you can book it on your own. That's as far as I got.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank you.
Lisa says, so there's no organization that provides escort companionship. I'm not 100% sure. That idea came up in my mind, but she wanted in this situation, she wanted the airline to take care of it. And she was somewhat not taking my suggestions into consideration. So I just left it and I didn't push. But maybe somebody else knows if there's a escort service.
It's the unfortunate paradox that we run into in this scenario is liability issues as well as the cost issues. And I think because they had certain things in place for children, no one apparently has revisited those policies with respect to the special disabilities community. And for those that are advocates and pushing for things, it's probably just another thing on that list that's going to have to really be advocated for assistance, because with all of the heightened security measures at airports as well, you know, you've got to also factor in bringing in an outside party to travel unless they were a ticketed traveler from start to finish with a person. with the special need, you'd run into some other logistical issues with them because they would be approving, them to come through the TSA and all of that. So like I said, it's a logistical situation as well as a policy situation that I just don't necessarily think has been really advocated for and thought through on the parts of, especially of our airlines.
Well, if they're in a wheelchair and they have wheelchair service, they will stay with them the entire time, even during the waiting period between flights in the connecting city. So if they're the unaccompanied minor or the wheelchair, they will stay with them, but the cognitive disability, they won't. So like you said, there's still some discrepancies there.
And at a lot of airports, unfortunately, that third-party company that handles the wheelchairs, they don't always stay. I know they say that they do, but most of the time they drop the person off at the gate. They may come back at around boarding time to help them onto the plane. But in most cases, because they're understaffed severely in that particular area at just about every airport in the country, they don't, although the policies say that they can stay, they generally don't because they have such a backlog and so few people to do that escort service.
And I would always say that whenever there's some type of escort service or companionship, or you just need to make sure that you have all that in writing and that the client knows and understands, and you don't want anything to come back on you, right? And you don't want someone to be left in an unsafe situation where then they say, you didn't tell me, and there's, at least for my clients that don't have disabilities, there's an underlying understanding of how to travel. Like most people know that they need to get there 2 to 3 hours ahead, what the process is like, getting to the hotel, having your confirmation either on your phone or printed out. And so these are all things that you have to make sure are in writing and that they sign off on when they're traveling, people with extra disabilities, because they don't know, they need that help. We can't assume that they know all the steps of traveling, right?
All right, I think we've got one more question, Stacy.
Is it about seniors traveling internationally without a companion?
Yes.
Yeah, again, this is all kind of that gray area where you have to really understand what's going on with that senior traveling. Some of my senior travelers are very savvy, and some of them are medium savvy, but they've never used Uber before. And if they really shouldn't be traveling, you have to use some common sense and say, I think this might be too far for you, or maybe we can get somebody to go with you, or, you need to go on a senior focused trip so that they, the tour operator understands that it's all seniors in the group, but you just have to see what level that they are at. Some older seniors, they prefer to rent a car and pay more than just get an Uber straight to the hotel because that's what they're used to. Gray area.
Yes.
Yeah, Trina's talking about how you can have a pass to walk with your family member to the gate.
And we're going to talk some more about that next week, those tools and things that are available. But the key point, if you'll note that Stacy mentioned in terms of the protecting of your brand, be very mindful on any booking, whether it's a person who has a special disability or not, that you want to make sure that you're booking things that you can stand by, and that, in some cases something went wrong, that you've done all of your due diligence to make sure that it was a solid booking when you made it, not just booking it for the money, but booking in a very ethical way, and that you're being conscious of your brand when you put yourself out there to book any travel, because the same thing is, you just got to have your, as my little cousin would say, your spidey senses going, so that if something seems not quite right, that it's okay for you to not do a booking.
Yeah,
So,
and that's gonna open the doors for more bookings, right? Because you'll get confidence by having that conversation, and then the next time someone approaches me about this, I'm gonna be able to rattle it off much easier, right? And so I don't want to put myself or anybody else in that situation, whether they have disabilities or not. So always have them sign off on everything, the cancellation policy. I have my clients sign off that they have a passport that's not going to expire longer than 6 months after they return home. They sign off on everything. And then still they ask questions of things that they've signed off on. So, that's your job as the travel advisor, to advise them, but you need to get it in writing. And it's okay to not do a booking if it's for somebody's safety.
absolutely. Well, do we have any additional questions before we wrap up? Well, once again, outstanding training. Thank you, Stacy, for being so transparent and providing us with such good information. We encourage all of you guys to join us again next week. We're going to be, like I said, kind of picking up from this point and talking about some tools and things, how to find out that information for your travelers and all of that. So we'll be doing that on Monday of next week as well.
Okay. Have a
So-
good day, everybody.
That's right. Have a good evening.
You're welcome.